The streets of New York City, once a symbol of American dreams, are now corridors of fear. A silent invasion is underway, criminals emboldened by lax laws and open borders. These are not peaceful migrants. They are illegal immigrants, armed and dangerous, turning our city into a battleground. It's the single mother, afraid to walk her child home from school. It's the elderly couple, prisoners in their own apartment. This isn't about fear-mongering. It's about facing a chilling reality. We must confront the truth about illegal immigration and the dangers it poses. The time for action is now. Behind the statistics are real people, victims whose lives have been shattered by violence inflicted by illegal immigrants. There's the young woman, brutally attacked in broad daylight. There's the grieving family, forever haunted by the loss of a loved one. These victims are our neighbors, our friends, our families. We must demand accountability from our elected officials. New York City, once a beacon of hope, has become a sanctuary city, a haven for illegal immigrants. The truth is being silenced, buried under political rhetoric. While many illegal immigrants are hardworking, a dangerous subset poses a real threat. We cannot be lulled into a false sense of security. The safety and security of American citizens must be our top priority. The scale of the problem is staggering. Illegal immigrants flood across our borders, vanishing into the streets of New York City. They disappear into the shadows, their identities unknown. They are aided by enablers who prioritize political ideology over safety. They are given access to social services while living in the shadows. This isn't about compassion, it's about complicity. We must demand action now before it's too late. Illegal immigrants arrive with a dangerous disregard for our laws. They are emboldened by sanctuary city policies that shield them from enforcement. Amongst them lurk hardened criminals, gang members, and even terrorists. The act of crossing the border illegally is a crime. We must prioritize the safety and well-being of American citizens. Statistics tell a chilling story, contradicting the narrative of open border activists. The numbers may be manipulated, but the victims are real. The mainstream media often downplays crimes committed by illegal immigrants. Behind the curated narratives lie shattered lives and terrorized communities. These are the stories that demand to be told. The price of permissive immigration policies is paid in blood and tears. Our hospitals are overwhelmed, our schools overcrowded. The human cost of illegal immigration is immeasurable. It's the fear that stalks our streets and the erosion of trust in our government. This is about protecting our homes, our families, and our way of life. We must demand that our elected officials put the safety of American citizens first. Sanctuary city policies are about obstruction, not compassion. They hinder federal authorities from removing dangerous criminals. These policies provide cover for violent criminals, gang members, and even terrorists. Every day we hear stories of illegal immigrants committing heinous crimes. This is not compassion, it's madness. The consequences of these policies are real and devastating. For every illegal immigrant seeking a better life, another comes to prey on the innocent. The blood is on the hands of those who chose ideology over security. These are the stories the mainstream media ignores. We must demand accountability and justice. We must demand that our elected officials prioritize the safety of American citizens. Statistics can't capture the pain of a mother who has lost her child. Remember, Kate Steinle, Molly Tibbetts, and Sarah Root. These are the faces of American carnage, the human cost of open borders. These are the stories that must fuel our fight for justice and security. America has always been a nation of immigrants, but the melting pot only works when everyone respects our laws. When illegal immigrants pour across our borders, the melting pot boils over. This is about loving our country enough to protect it. We must demand that our elected officials secure our borders and enforce our laws. We must stand up for America. One of the most insidious consequences of unchecked illegal immigration and the sanctuary city policies that enable it is the erosion of trust. Trust in our government, trust in our law enforcement, and trust in our communities. When law-abiding citizens see criminals being shielded from justice, when they see their elected officials prioritizing the well-being of those who broke the law to be here over those who played by the rules, it breeds cynicism, resentment, and a deep sense of betrayal. How can we, as Americans, be expected to respect the law when our own leaders refuse to do so? How can we have faith in a system that seems rigged against us? A system that rewards lawbreakers and punishes those who dare to speak out? The very foundation of our society, the rule of law, is crumbling before our eyes, and we are told to be silent, to accept this new reality, to embrace the chaos. This erosion of trust is not just an abstract concept, it has real-world consequences. It makes our communities less safe, as people become more reluctant to report crimes or cooperate with law enforcement, fearing that their concerns will be ignored or worse, used against them. It creates a climate of fear and suspicion, where neighbors no longer trust neighbors, and where the bonds that hold us together as a community begin to fray. We are told that diversity is our strength, but diversity without unity is a recipe for disaster. It is time to stop pretending that we can have both open borders and a safe and cohesive society. It is time to choose between the rule of law and the rule of the mob. It is time to choose America. Sanctuary city policies, far from creating safe havens for hard-working immigrants, are transforming our cities into breeding grounds for lawlessness. By refusing to cooperate with federal immigration authorities, these cities are sending a clear message. If you can make it here, you can get away with anything. And criminals, both foreign and domestic, are taking notice. Gangs in particular are exploiting sanctuary city policies to expand their operations, recruit new members, and terrorize our communities. They know that in these cities, they are unlikely to face serious consequences for their crimes. They operate with impunity, smuggling drugs, trafficking humans, and engaging in violence with little fear of arrest or deportation. But the victims of these crimes are not just statistics. They are real people, often from the very communities that sanctuary city policies claim to protect. They are the shopkeepers whose businesses are robbed, the families whose loved ones are murdered, the children who are recruited into gangs and forced into a life of crime. The human cost of these policies is immeasurable. They're destroying lives, tearing apart families, and undermining the very fabric of our society. Yet, the politicians who champion these policies remain deaf to the cries of their constituents, blinded by ideology, and deaf to the suffering they have unleashed. Section 3. The silent suffering of legal immigrants. Lost in the debate over illegal immigration is the plight of legal immigrants, those who played by the rules, waited their turn, and came to this country legally, only to see their sacrifices devalued and their voices drowned out by the relentless demands for amnesty and open borders. They are the silent majority, the forgotten victims of our broken immigration system. Many legal immigrants came to this country fleeing poverty, violence, or persecution. They came here seeking a better life for themselves and their children, believing in the promise of America, the promise of freedom, opportunity, and the rule of law. But they are now watching in dismay as that promise is betrayed by politicians who seem more interested in pandering to special interests than in upholding the very principles that make this country great. They see their wages depressed by illegal labor, their communities strained by overcrowded schools and hospitals, and their safety threatened by the criminal element that flourishes in the shadows of sanctuary cities. Yet, they are told to be silent, to be grateful for the crumbs they are thrown, to accept that their voices don't matter in the face of the powerful open borders lobby. It is time to stop ignoring the voices of legal immigrants. It is time to recognize their contributions, their sacrifices, and their unwavering belief in the American dream. It is time to honor their commitment to this country by enforcing our immigration laws, securing our borders, and restoring the rule of law. Section 4. No refuge from reality. There is no escaping the consequences of our actions, no sanctuary from reality. The longer we allow illegal immigration to continue unchecked, the longer we cling to the failed policies of the past, the more we endanger our future. The time for denial is over. The time for action is now. We must demand that our elected officials enforce our immigration laws, secure our borders, and put an end to the sanctuary city policies that are endangering our communities. We must reject the false choice between compassion and security, recognizing that true compassion lies in upholding the rule of law and protecting the well-being of all our citizens, both native-born and naturalized. This is not about hate, it's about love. It's about loving our country enough to fight for it, to defend its borders, to uphold its laws. It's about loving our families enough to keep them safe, to shield them from harm, to ensure that they can live their lives without fear. It's about reclaiming our heritage as a nation of laws, a nation of immigrants, a nation that welcomes those who come here legally, seeking to contribute to our shared prosperity and embrace our shared values. We, the American people, deserve nothing less. Section 1. The false prophets of open borders. The open borders zealots, with their utopian fantasies and their venomous accusations of racism, would have you believe that anyone who dares to question the wisdom of their policies is motivated by hate. They preach tolerance while practicing intolerance, demanding compassion for lawbreakers while showing none for the victims of their crimes. They speak of a borderless world, a global community where national sovereignty is a relic of the past, and where the very concept of citizenship is considered archaic and exclusionary. They envision a world without walls, without borders, without laws, a world where chaos reigns and where the strong prey on the weak. They claim the moral high ground, accusing those who disagree with them of being heartless xenophobes, of lacking empathy for the plight of the less fortunate. But their compassion is selective, extending only to those who fit their narrow ideological agenda. They have no compassion for the victims of illegal immigrant crime, the families torn apart by deportation, the communities struggling to cope with the strain on their resources. Their vision of America is not one of strength and unity, but of weakness and division. They seek to dismantle the very foundations of our nation, to erode our sovereignty, and to transform us into a rudderless ship adrift in a sea of global chaos. Section 2. Compassion without courage is chaos. True compassion is not about opening our borders to all comers, regardless of the consequences. It is not about turning a blind eye to lawlessness or rewarding those who break our laws. True compassion requires courage, the courage to stand up for what is right, even when it is unpopular, the courage to enforce our laws, secure our borders, and protect our citizens from harm. Compassion without courage is not compassion at all. It is weakness. It is surrender to the forces of chaos and disorder. It is a betrayal of the very people we are sworn to protect. The open borders advocates, in their misguided zeal to create a borderless utopia, fail to grasp this fundamental truth. They mistake weakness for compassion, chaos for progress, and surrender for victory. They are leading us down a dangerous path, a path that leads not to a brighter future, but to anarchy and ruin. We must resist their siren song of open borders and lawlessness. We must choose courage over cowardice, strength over weakness, and security over chaos. We must choose America. The Open Borders lobby, in their relentless campaign to silence any opposition to their agenda, often trots out the tired trope of the model minority, claiming that illegal immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans. They point to carefully curated statistics and anecdotal evidence, ignoring the inconvenient truth that contradicts their narrative. The reality is that crime knows no borders, no race, no ethnicity. To claim that illegal immigrants are somehow immune to the temptations of criminal activity is not only naive, but dangerously misleading. It creates a false sense of security and lulls us into a state of complacency, making us more vulnerable to the very threats we refuse to acknowledge. The truth is that sanctuary city policies, by shielding criminals from justice and encouraging lawlessness, are making our communities less safe for everyone, including law-abiding immigrants. The blood of their victims, regardless of their immigration status, stains the hands of those who champion these reckless policies. We cannot allow ourselves to be blinded by political correctness or intimidated by accusations of racism. We must have the courage to face the truth, however uncomfortable it may be, and to act decisively to protect our communities from harm. The price of silence is steep. It is measured in the shattered lives of crime victims, the erosion of trust in our institutions, and the slow death of our national sovereignty. It is a price we can no longer afford to pay. For too long, we have allowed the open borders zealots to control the narrative, to dictate the terms of the debate, and to silence any opposition with accusations of racism and xenophobia. We have been cowed into submission, afraid to speak out for fear of being labeled intolerant or bigoted. But our silence has only emboldened them, allowed them to push their radical agenda further and further into the mainstream. They have grown arrogant in their power, believing that they have silenced us for good. But they are wrong. We are still here. We are still angry, and we are done being silent. The time has come to raise our voices in unison and demand an end to the madness. We must reclaim our borders, enforce our laws, and restore sanity to our immigration system. We must do this not out of hate, but out of love. Love for our country, love for our families, and love for the rule of law. We stand at a crossroads in our nation's history, a point where the path we choose will determine the fate of our republic. Will we continue down the road of complacency, paved with the broken promises of open borders fanatics and the shattered lives of those they claim to champion? Or will we summon the courage to change course, to reclaim our birthright as a nation of laws, a nation of borders, a nation that puts the safety and well-being of its own citizens first? The choice is clear, but the consequences of inaction are dire. We have seen the warning signs, the escalating violence, the erosion of trust, the unraveling of the social fabric that holds us together as a nation. We have heard the pleas of those who have been victimized, the families torn apart, the communities terrorized by the consequences of unchecked illegal immigration and the sanctuary city policies that embolden it. We can no longer afford to pretend that this is not a crisis of our own making, a crisis that threatens the very foundations of our republic. We can no longer afford to be silent, to cower in the face of accusations of racism and xenophobia, to allow the radical left to dictate the terms of the debate. The time for talk is over. The time for action is now. We, the American people, have a right to live in safety and security, free from the fear of violence and lawlessness. We have a right to demand that our elected officials enforce our laws, secure our borders, and protect us from those who would do us harm, regardless of their origin or their intentions. This is not about hate. It's about love. Love for our country, love for our families, and love for the principles that make America exceptional. We must demand an end to sanctuary city policies, these havens for criminality that prioritize the well-being of lawbreakers over the safety of law-abiding citizens. We must demand that our elected officials secure our borders, not with empty promises and virtue-signaling gestures, but with walls, fences, and the unwavering commitment to enforce our immigration laws. We must reject the false choice between compassion and security, recognizing that true compassion lies in upholding the rule of law, protecting the innocent, and preserving the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. The time has come to reclaim our birthright, to restore the rule of law, to secure our borders, and to make America safe again. The time has come to stand up, speak out, and fight for the future of our nation. The time has come to choose America.